Hello and welcome to the Leaders Council podcast, the podcast for the people who run the country and the people who keep the country running. You join us on yet another overcast day in the capital. I'm Matthew O'Neill, and today, as always, we ensure that we have a variety of distinct perspectives on leadership. First, we're joined by Rick Gutteridge, co-owner and managing director of Smoking Gun, a Manchester-based PR agency. Rick, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Excellent. Thank you for coming on the program today. We might as well dive straight in. What does the word leader mean to you?
Sure. I think the word leader, it really invokes an image of someone who is taking control, taking charge, and leading. Whether it be a group of people, an organisation, a business, whatever it might be. It's the person who ultimately everyone's looking towards to give guidance and to guide people on their journey.
And how would you describe your personal leadership style?
It's tricky how to describe yourself in terms of style. I think I try and have, fair style of people, trying to balance that kind of leading by example, but blending that with the emotional intelligence to know how and when to deal with people in different scenarios, how different members of your team sort of react to different situations. I think I have a kind of personable style and sort of democratic style, but also not scared to sort of enforce my ultimate sort of decision making and sort of drive the decisions that need to be made. When tough decisions have to be made, I will stand up and do that.
Now let's go back to the very beginning of your career when you were first starting out in the world of work. Was there a particular individual or circumstance that formed the way that you lead today?
I think over the years, you take so much from every kind of either line manager, so you sort of direct manager through to the bosses and leaders that you work with, right back from sort of being in working part-time jobs as teenagers in restaurants and pubs and bars and seeing the way that supervisors and managers dealt with people and, as you say, going into the sort of world of professional work then. I think really people that had sort of good empathy and the sort of human bosses were the ones that I always stood out for me in terms of people that could have a laugh with you, but really sort of inspire you, but not through fear, inspire you through wanting to do the best for them, to please them, because you knew that they demanded great work, but they'd also support you when you got it wrong and encourage you to kind of get it wrong by failing because you're trying to stretch yourself. And I think that always stuck with me, those bosses that kind of led by that way rather than and never responded to people who tried to rule by fear or lead with a big stick.
Now, of course, any part of the development of anyone in their career is the mentor-mentee relationship. Do you practice that within your business?
Yeah, I think within our sort of leadership team, we're sort of moved to I guess it's from the business book, Rocket Fuel, and sort of having the visionary integrator kind of role with our ops director and myself in terms of line management, and then my ops director, then line managers, other people within the senior team, sort of sales and marketing and client services, etc. But I think you have your line management, then you also have a separate mentor within the business who may or may not be a line manager, and they're there to sort of guide you on the journey of personal growth within work, as opposed to just being held accountable to your roles and responsibilities. I think when you are the sort of business owner, that can be hard. When you're sort of in a pulling over for yourself, who do you go to? That's where we've looked in the past to bring non-exec directors in to kind of give that third-party sounding guidance, challenge as well to myself and Vanessa as business owners to kind of act as some of those mentors. But also, again, I've looked back to the previous leaders of agencies that I've worked at earlier in my career and still speak to 2 or 3 of those people and get together with them fairly regularly, pick their brain and sort of, in an informal capacity, also see those guys as kind of mentors.
What's your advice for young people entering the world of work?
I think the dynamic of the way that people want to work, the rapid increase in sort of technology and changing attitudes to sort of working hours, work-life balance, the real sort of shift in awareness and understanding of sort of mental health at work in relation to kind of burnout and things, kind of really an interesting dynamic and how that's going to sort of play forward to the next generation. But I think this classic advice that will never go out of fashion, and that's work hard, be the hardest working person, be inquisitive. Now, being the hardest worker doesn't mean working 12, 13-hour days forever and burning yourself out, but it means whilst you're there, you have active listening, you're really taking things in, you're being inquisitive to find out more, do more, you're hungry to kind of take on more responsibility, and not waiting to be given tasks. You're thinking about how you can help those around you, your line managers, your colleagues, how can you actually take work off them and be ready to volunteer to take action and to take things on. If you do all those things, that's what will springboard you into sort of having a successful career.
I'd actually like to touch on the burnout that you were discussing during that most recent answer. What do you think that can be done to address burnout within the office?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at my sector there, obviously, in particular within sort of communications world. And I think, you probably go back, 13, 14 years, I think, since sort of iPhones, and for a short period before that, BlackBerries came in, and everyone thought, obviously, they're amazing devices and they're so useful in the world of work that we do, but it turned on this always-on ability where people, clients, colleagues, people could always get you with an email, and a sort of a feeling that this device that's always in your pocket or your handbag or your coat pocket or whatever that's always with you is kind of sucking you in to sort of do more work. So I think increasingly companies are, and even smaller companies that are looking at sort of mental health first aider training, having designated sort of colleagues who are trained to spot early signs of people sort of who are maybe struggling at work because they are burning out. And I think it's giving people the comfort to know that they can talk internally and raise issues if they are feeling burnt out. I think it's really important that people take holiday allowance, keep themselves refreshed. I think having regular breaks, and certainly as you get a little bit older as well, you notice this more and more. Perhaps when you're in your 20s, you just don't think about you're looking forward to holiday because you're going to go away and do great social things with friends, partners, family, etc. Not realising actually you need a bit of a mental switch off just to ease the burden on your mind. So I think that's really where I'm sort of coming from there. People are just perhaps being overburdened by this always on culture in work that can exist and not feeling they can talk about things perhaps. But I think that's changing in society.
Now, unfortunately, our time together is very quickly drawing to its close. But before I let you go, what does the next 12 months have in store for Smoking Gun?
Yeah, exciting plans. Heading 2020, we've hit the ground running already. There a number of exciting new client wins. We're recruiting at the moment on a number of roles. We've got plans in place for growth this year, developing a few new products and services within the mix as well. So it's exciting times. 2019 was a tough year for many people with uncertainty, and it feels like 2020, the handbrake is off a little bit in terms of the wider business environment and clients starting to release budgets again. So exciting times for everyone.
Well, Rick, it's been an absolute pleasure discussing leadership with you. I very much hope you come back on the program in the near future for a further, more in-depth conversation. Rick, thank you.
Very much. Thank you.
That was Rick Gutteridge, co-owner and managing director of Smoking Gun. And now, if you haven't heard it before, is Jonathan White's exclusive interview with Sir Geoff Hurst.
We're now joined, though, by former England footballer and still the only man to score a hat-trick in a World Cup final, Sir Geoff Hurst. Thank you very much for coming on today.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Good afternoon.
And perhaps I should start and get it over and done with. I know you must be bored with it, and you've probably been asked 1,000 times. But when you got out for a duck playing for Essex, Jeff, what was going through your head at the time?
Well, of course, that's not one of the most asked questions I get. Although there are one or two people who are very familiar who do Google me, who realise that I did score nothing for Essex. My only game for Essex first team when we played against Lancashire in Liverpool, a place called Egbert in Liverpool, many, many years ago, 1962, I think that was. So I didn't, I didn't really feel it at the time. It was lucky to be playing, I guess. There were one or two injuries. But the problem that I had was really messing about between the two sports. That was very detrimental to me over that period of time, being stuck between the two sports.
And I think for those that don't know, there's another world that might exist where Sir Geoff Hurst was a first-class cricketer and not perhaps a footballer. But whether it's business or cricket or football, obviously the importance of leadership, it can't be understated, no matter what form that comes in. When you were at West Ham, Geoff, and when Ron Greenwood first came along, he made obviously some pretty radical changes. Was this a man that genuinely inspired confidence the first time you'd meet him? Absolutely. I mean, he was simply a fantastic coach or teacher, if you like, of football. And the quite always mentioned when we talk about Ron Greenwood, Harry Redknapp, who was played under him and has been very successful as a player and a manager over many, many, many years. He's come across many coaches, of course, and managers during his time over 50 years, I guess. He would still say that Ron Greenwood is the best coach he'd worked with. So you're very fortunate. I think you think you're lucky when you come across, if you have a great teacher at school and a great coach as we had in Ron Greenwood, and of course a great manager in Sir Alf Ramsey. So to come across people like that of that calibre can have a huge influence on your career, of course, and then your life, and that's quite purely the case. Absolutely. And in those early days at West Ham, with a manager like Ron there, it's also important to have confidence with your other players, and of course they become your friends. Who did you look at the time when to inspire confidence in yourself? Was it Peters? I think probably. Well, I was very fortunate to play with the calibre of the players I did. Again, extremely fortunate to play with the captain of England and West Ham, and Martin Peters, who was a fantastic player. And as far as Martin's concerned, I think sometimes he didn't quite get the recognition he deserved. What a wonderful player he was. In terms of inspiring confidence, I always probably say that the biggest influence for me, I guess, would be the captain, Bobby Moore. Although he was only about 8 months older than me, he graduated through the system probably 3 or 4 years earlier. He played for England in 62, 4 years before the final when I played. And so he was more looked upon him more as a senior player, if you like, not as a guy with the same age group as me. And I looked at how he trained, how he acted, how he behaved, and how he played. And so he would say, I would also say he was a big influence on me. One thing I would say about leadership, what I do understand clearly in all walks of life, leadership is at the top, is absolutely vital for a business, a football team, in any walk of life to be successful. And it's quite evident. I was in the motor trade for a long time as well, selling car warranties to car dealerships. And you could almost tell when you walked into the business, many of the car dealerships, you could almost tell from the moment you walked in by initial reaction, people came and welcomed you, that the business was well run or conversely not well run at all. And so I understand the value and quality of leadership. And that's why I'm very fortunate to be involved in my career in those early days with two great leaders in Ron Greenwood and Alf Ramsey. Absolutely. And since you've already brought him up, Jeff, I think it'd be remiss not to go a little bit further with that. But obviously, after at West Ham, your playing came to the attention of Sir Alf Ramsey. Now, there's a man I'm sure when you walked into a room, you knew who was in charge. When it came to managing that England team, what was his style like, Jeff?
Well, the first thing I say about Alf Ramsey, he's probably over my life the most powerful influence who had on me as a person. Naturally, it happens to an extent because he's got your whole career in his hand. Whether he picks you for England or he doesn't pick you, it can have a great impact on your career and, of course, your life. But in that era I was involved for 6 or 7 years, it was quite clear who was the boss. He was quite very, very strict. Probably at a time, maybe overly strict, but at times you probably wouldn't necessarily get away with it in today's football because it's changed dramatically in how you deal with players then and players now. But he was the most powerful man I came across, and very few people. And he was quite ruthless in getting people out who didn't want to be part of a group, part of a team. It is important that if you've got a group of people, and that's in any walk of life, they're all singing off the same hymn sheet, and you don't have anybody that's griping or moaning about the system. And if you've got people like that in the organisation, one thing I have learned, and I've taken it on in my life, my family, you've got somebody in the group that doesn't want to be part of it, you get them out. And Alf, I think, was quite ruthless with that in his staff. And I think that's one of the most serious things I think I've learnt over a long period of time.
And is there, do you think, a specific moment, I'm sure there's probably dozens, but is there a specific moment, if you could perhaps pick right now, that did show those qualities in Sir Alf so sharply?
Yes, I think for me, certainly, I think there are instances of players who you thought would be in the team, or certainly in the squad, and surprising they were not. There was no necessary reason for it, but looking back, I do think perhaps they were people that Alf didn't think wanted to be part of a group. So that's for me. In terms of my personal view, I think that it looked prior to the World Cup that I was going to be playing in it. Only a few games before I was playing, and I played with Gutteridge in a game against Yugoslavia only a couple of months before the final. And it looked at that stage as if I was going to be playing in the team. But in a couple of more friendly games before the final in Poland and Norway, I think, and Denmark, I played 2 of the 4 games, and I probably didn't quite replicate my form that I'd been showing at West Ham and in the early couple of games for England. And he left me out in the first game of the World Cup against Uruguay. He started off with Jimmy Greaves and Roger Allen. So I had an impact of thinking at that stage I looked like I was going to play, and didn't start because of just a lack of form. I didn't play quite well enough to justify my position. And somewhat fortuitously, I only got back in the team because of a nasty gash to shin on Jimmy Greaves' leg.
And I think what you've said there, Jeff, actually does sum that up really well. And more than that, whilst it's important to have that someone in charge with those qualities, it's almost useless if there isn't a strong and unified team behind them. And there really must have been moments, Jeff, maybe there weren't, but let us know, in that 66 competition, the prolonged pressure on all of you, the weight of a nation, did it get to you?
Oh, not for me personally, no. I think, and I don't, not for me, not for a second. I think I was just happy to be involved in the squad initially. Not at all. You're not aware of the magnitude of the occasion, really, looking back out. So I never really felt, people talk about pressure a lot and it's there, and players talk about it in life. I didn't really necessarily feel any great pressure during the time I was there. And what is also important to say about Alf Ramsey, the people he left behind that were left in the squad after he'd moved 1 or 2 players out, the squad were a bunch of very hard-nosed, professional, top-quality people. And that was, again, the leadership that Al showed. He got people in together that were very, very strong personally. And I think that was part of the success we had. We were I always describe our group as hard-nosed professionals. We have some great players, but overall they were great, hard-nosed professional players and great quality people who we've kept in contact with, over the years.
And Jeff, I've got to ask, and I'm not making this up, I've genuinely heard that people do ask you whether or not you realise there were people on the pitch at that moment. I imagine you were busy on something else.
Well, I did some theatre shows last year. They've gone fairly well, and we're going to do a series of theatre shows, in fact, starting this week, over the next 2 or 3 months. And at the end of the theatre shows, we have about 20 minutes where we allow the people in the audience to ask questions. And I won't mention both. They're too long to talk about both questions. The other one's a really stupid one. It's too long for me to tell you. It's absolutely ridiculous. But the other ridiculous question I get asked, did I realise there were people on the pitch? And of course I jokingly say, yes, I was just about to shoot to score the goal. And I looked round, put my foot on the ball and looked round for a little while and said, oh dear, there are 6 or 7 people running on the pitch. So that's, I've been asked that once at one of the theatre shows. So I make a joke about that and saying, yes, I put my foot on the ball and waited to just have a glance round,
Maybe it does prove there are things such as stupid questions, really.
Yeah, there certainly are. I've got another one which I won't bore you with. It won't be too long to tell you. I was in a Jersey or Channel Line, Jersey or Guernsey 2 or 3 years ago, and most stupid, irrelevant questions, absolutely nothing to do with football whatsoever, which was absolutely. But I can use that now because it is quite funny.
Well, maybe another time then. But we.
Well, you want me? I can tell you if you want. You got time? I can tell you if you want.
Jeff, go on. I think it would be silly if I said no at this point.
Okay, so I was doing at a dinner in the Channel Lines, 300 or 400 people, black tie dinner, guest of honour. On this occasion, I was speaking for about 20 minutes, then allowing questions from the audience at the end of the evening. And there was usual football questions, and then all of a sudden I had somebody at the back who asked a question. I didn't quite hear what he said. He didn't have the microphone with him, so I said, I didn't hear what he said. Can you please give this chap the microphone so I can hear clearly what he said? So the chap had the mic, and he said, when a turtle loses its shell, is it naked or is it homeless?
Right. What a question. What a question.
I think that would be definitely in the stupid category, wouldn't it? So we had a laugh about that.
You've got to have a patient of a saint, I think, sometimes to put up with things like that. But then again,
I found it amusing. I just found it amusing. In fact, some of the audience found it highly amusing as well. So it did make me laugh that day.
If you can put up with my questions, you can probably put up with anything. But there would have become a point, though, Jeff, I think you were a young man when obviously this happened, when you must have realised that teammates, began looking at you for leadership. Is that something that occurred to you, or did you just realise that by one way or the other, people actually begin to look up for you for inspiration?
Well, possibly. That's never really struck me until you've actually mentioned it now, quite frankly. It's a new question. Does anybody look up to me? I'm sure perhaps there are people who pay you compliments of fans of West Ham and Stoke, and of course England fans who I think probably it would be very immodest of me to suggest that I felt that somebody was looking to me for inspiration.
You don't have to, but I will.
It's okay for a third party to do it. Perhaps that may have been the case over the years. People look at you and maybe it has a helpful effect. But I do think you how you behave and set examples on and off the pitch, people must realise that has an influence. How you react and behave to situations on and off the field surely probably has an impact to younger players coming into the team latterly.
And with that, looking at football today, is there anybody that you think particularly on the field or the sidelines that strikes you as someone with those qualities that you could identify in a natural leader?
Well, current players, you mean?
Oh, players, managers, anybody that you look to today, really?
Well, I think some of the outstanding. I think the best example about a leader and at the moment is Klopp at Liverpool. He has been absolutely fantastic to acquire the players and get them to. Their attitude is absolutely fantastic. They're great players, but there's more than just being good players in football. It is have a good player with a fantastic attitude, and their willingness to work for each other and the team is absolutely outstanding. Hence these unbelievable results. There are, and the great players not always succeed as individuals, or probably even certainly as a team if you haven't got the right attitude alongside it. And they're probably, and that comes through the leadership. That's not just luck.
Absolutely.
That's absolute leadership. He'd be the best example, of course, in football terms today, easily. And of course, but going back not that long ago, Alex Ferguson is just absolutely. You've got to take him as the first example, because Klopp's only done this over a period of time, a short period of time. But if you look at the 26, 27 years that Alex Ferguson did with Manchester United, and subsequently since he's gone, how they are not doing so well. He's the best example of management we've probably ever seen, and I don't think anybody will see the light of that kind of leadership again. It's absolutely astonishing.
And do you think, could you imagine Sir Alf or even Ron Greenwood managing teams today?
Yes, I think so. I think yes, no question at all. I think Ron Greenwood. Yeah, the answer, straightforward answer is yes.
Good answer.
The straightforward answer is yes. I can elaborate as much as you want, but the straight answer is absolutely categorically yes.
And with I know if we could talk about this probably for the next hour or so, but I'm conscious of the time. Looking back through your playing career, perhaps especially your time for England, who was it that struck you more than anyone else on the pitch that displayed qualities of not just leadership but companionship and level-headedness that you think that have stuck with you all these years later?
Well, I think I was very fortunate, and I wouldn't pick any one player out. I think looking at that,
so many,
and that's why we were successful, because we had so many showing all those qualities that you just mentioned throughout the team. I think that was outstanding, and it's an opportunity to talk about all of them in that breath. And there was nobody. And going back from an earlier question for me, all hard-nosed professionals, good teammates, good socially, and that's why we kept in touch with each other on our golf days every year up until about 5 years ago. Of course, with the sadly dwindling numbers, we still got on. Our wives got on all together all those years later. It didn't just finish after '66. That reunion, that camaraderie, that team spirit, getting on with each other lasted for a long time. And I wouldn't, when you put those questions and how you categorise those, I would pick every one of the 11 players who you put in that category that were like that. There was nobody else. They were all outstanding. And I think that was a big part. I can't stress how big a part that was. And I've said that many times, for the success of the team. We had some great players. We had some great players, of course. But without the attitude alongside that, going back to an earlier question, we wouldn't have been as ultimately as successful.
Exactly. Without that, the whole will never be greater than the sum of its parts. But with it,
yes, the word is team. The word is team.
Absolutely.
And I always use the word team when I talk. Sometimes together, everyone achieves more, and that's the same in any walk of life. That's fundamental.
And lastly, Jeff, looking, if you were to give advice, and whether this is in sport or business or indeed any other walk of life, what would you identify, if you can, as the key tenet that you can't go without in terms of leading a team, no matter what that team is?
Single-mindedness, dedication to the job, thinking about that role, that job in leadership all the time. It's a huge part of your life. I don't think you can switch off when you're in business at the top level or sport at the top level. You may, have a couple of weeks holiday, but I'm even sure if these top managers and leaders in all walks of life are away on holiday on a beach somewhere warm, I'm sure they will not switch off for 2 weeks and completely not think about their role as the boss of an organisation. And I think you're completely focused. You're always thinking about things, thinking about improvements, and it's just dedication and tuning your life to being successful.
Excellent. Well, Jeff, on that point, thank you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Very good nice to have a talk about this and just go over the past and just refresh my own memory about the quality of the players I grew up with.
Excellent. Another time, it would be great to talk again.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you.
This has been the Leaders Council podcast. Thank you for celebrating excellence in leadership with us. I have been your host, Matthew O'Neill. Until next time, goodbye. Thank you for listening to our podcast. The views expressed within the podcast do not reflect the views of the Leaders Council of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, its parent company or subsidiaries, members of staff, other guests, or any other person therein associated.